Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
The U.S. Supreme Court weighs tax credits for Arizona's school choice program. I'm Matt Barber, Director of Cultural Affairs with Liberty Counsel and Associate Dean with Liberty University School of Law. In today for Matt Staver. And joining me in studio is Shawn Akers, Dean of Liberty University's Helms School of Government and Policy Analyst with Liberty Counsel. Well, in recent weeks, the U.S. Supreme Court heard oral arguments for the Arizona Christian School Tuition Organization versus Kathleen M. Wynn. And this case involves a challenge to an Arizona school choice law that provides dollar-for-dollar tax credits to taxpayers who make contributions to independent organizations, which in turn grant scholarships to students attending private schools. And Liberty Counsel has filed an amicus brief in this case, and Mandy Campbell, who is the legal director for Liberty's Center for Law and Policy, was present, Shawn, at the hearing and was also available for media interviews afterward. Now, Liberty Counsel is representing the American Association of Christian Schools relative to this case, which includes Arizona private schools, which are directly affected by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the most liberal federal appeals court in the land. Their ruling that struck down the educational choice law, essentially the Ninth Circuit here engaging in viewpoint discrimination. And while some of the independent organizations that receive money under the tax credit program give scholarships only to sectarian schools, other organizations offer scholarships to secular and religious private schools. So again, we have the court stepping in, Shawn, here, and discriminating and facilitating discrimination against schools and individual taxpayers based on the simple fact that the monies they are using are going to support schools with a religious message.
You know, Matt, we've known for a long time that the nation's at a crossroads, and that crossroads will largely be determined by the way you bring the next generation up. Everybody knows that the children are the key. And what we're looking at here is a fight for who is going to teach your children, who's going to shape your children during these long hours of the day. And you have the right still to educate your children the way you want, but in most places you're going to pay a very hefty tax. You don't think of it in that way, but it is that way, Matt, because whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, you're going to pay taxes that go to fund public schools. You're just going to do it. So if you want to send your child if you don't like what they're being taught in public school, or you'd like to choose a different one, you can do that, but you're still going to be taxed, and then you're going to have to pay for their private education. So you're going to pay twice if you want them to receive a different viewpoint than the official viewpoint of the state. In this particular case, some groups have tried to lessen that burden by allowing you to use tax credits and other mechanisms so that you can shift a little bit of that tax burden off of yourself and send your children to another place to be educated with something closer in line with your own viewpoint. That's where I want you to understand it in those contexts. Our viewers, our listeners need to understand it in that context, that we've got the court really deciding who is going to shape the views of your children. And in California especially, the Ninth Circuit especially, they want that to be the public school system, and if you want to take them out, you're going to have to pay. Well,
that's right. But it's important, there's an important distinction to make here. The money that is coming to these organizations is primarily, it's from the voluntary donations of tax-paying citizens of Arizona and not from the government. So each organization within the program outlines which schools qualify for scholarships, and the donor chooses which organization to support and can be reimbursed for up to $500 in donations per year. That's where it's a tax credit, essentially a tax benefit, a write-off, if you will, that they can be reimbursed, and that can come back in the form So that's an important distinction here, is that this is all voluntary. These are people giving money to these organizations that help to make it possible for individuals to have an alternative to, as you pointed out, the official line of the government, whatever philosophies, secularist philosophies the government is teaching in public schools. If they want a different perspective, this is just a way, a very small way, mind you, that people are enabled to get that different perspective.
Matt, I mean, you're making a very good distinction here. We're not even talking about the use of government money we're not technically talking about the use of government money. It depends on how the government views that. Because right now, if you look at this closely, what the government is telling you here, what the court system is telling you here, is that unless you are taxed on these donations, unless you are taxed, you don't even get the tax credit.
Right.
It's not allowing you to reach into the government till and spend it where you want. They're literally saying you can't even spend your own money. Mm-hmm. You can't even give your own money toward it and still receive a tax credit that acknowledges that you're spending it toward education. This is truly, you're right. It's a very small concession for those that would want any kind of choice in education anyway, and even that is being fought tooth and nail by these leftist judges.
Well, those who have sued over this and the plaintiffs have really made an argument here that I think, if it wasn't so serious, and if the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals hadn't taken it seriously, it would be laughable. The plaintiffs have complained that donations to secular schools are lower than the donations that are being earmarked or are going to religious schools, so that the secular schools and the students are at a disadvantage because they have fewer financial resources available to them than are available to religious schools and students. Why is that laughable? Well, Shawn, how many billions upon billions upon billions of dollars every year go to secular schools? Government, to every single tax-paying citizen, pays a significant chunk of their hard-earned money to help support secular schools, our public schools. Here we have, again, some organizations that are not, and they're not just helping Christian or religious private schools, they're also helping secular private schools. But somehow, because on this little corner of the world where these individual organizations are helping to try to counterbalance the multi-billions of dollars going to secular schools by helping to provide a modicum of assistance to people who seek religious or even secular private schooling, that somehow secular schools are disadvantaged is absolutely mind-boggling.
Well, not only is it mind-boggling, Matt, it also shows this permeating idea that all good things come from and belong to the government. It's ridiculous to stop and think that the end goal is the funding of public education as opposed to making sure that children are educated. When you've got, do you understand where I'm going? I mean, this is an amazing distinction, that if the end result that the government claims is the education of children, then it shouldn't matter how you're educated. But what you just pointed out was that the cry that comes back on these things is that you are taking money away from, wait a minute, whose money was it to begin with? You are taking money away from the public school system and hurting it. No, we were spending money on our children so that they could receive a proper education. So you see that really the protectionism here is not even over education of young. Right. It's over the establishment and over the government-run public education system.
Well, the state of Arizona and various tuition organizations successfully had the case dismissed in the federal district court, but again, the Ninth Circuit overturned and overruled the district court. So now we wait. We wait to see what the United States Supreme Court, who agreed to hear the case, so they only agree to hear less than 1% of all cases that come before them. They have agreed to hear the case. I'm pretty confident that they are going to rule in favor of the state of Arizona and these organizations that are helping to facilitate the wishes of these donors and the wishes of parents to send their children to the school of their choice. I'm pretty confident the United States Supreme Court will do the right thing and do the constitutional thing here. Well, folks, we'd like for you to join with us in helping to further school choice, freedom of choice in the public schools. The left loves to talk about freedom of choice, but when it comes to controlling the minds of our children, they don't want to let loose. They don't want to relent and give control back to the parents. At Liberty Counsel, we are standing up in defense of parental rights, defense of choice, real choice, choice of parents to send their kids to the schools they find appropriate. Go to lc.org to learn how you can become part of our mission.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.